Today, you're going to learn 3 reasons why boundaries with your child battling addiction work. By the way, if you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button. So first of all, let's talk about the real reason for boundaries. The reason for boundaries is to protect the people on the inside. I want you to think about like a castle. And this comes from one of my interventionist friends. This is his example. My interventionist friend, Matt Brown, who's an interventionist in Oregon. Matt uses this example of a castle. And let's imagine that you live in this castle and you have a moat around the castle, and you have a drawbridge. So you pull the drawbridge up. That moat and the walls of the castle, the drawbridge being up, all of that. That is a boundary. You've set a boundary there, and that's to protect the people who are on the inside of the castle. And so it's not to try to control the people on the outside. It's to protect those who are on the inside. And it's very similar when you're setting boundaries with your child battling drug or alcohol addiction. So the boundaries are really there to protect you and other people who may live in your house, whether it's a spouse or whether it's a sibling of your child or siblings, is to protect all of you emotionally from being on that emotional roller coaster of dealing with the child battling drug or alcohol addiction, and is to protect you physically in some cases. People that are addicted to drugs or alcohol can sometimes be violent, have violent behavior. So you need to protect yourselves. So that's the real reason for the boundaries. Now, I realize that in some cases you may have some of you listening may have a teenager. So it's not like you can push them out of the house. So you may need to send them to a treatment program. And then they may need to be out of the house for a little while. But ultimately you have to take care of them. I mean, you have a responsibility to that minor to make sure that they're safe. But anyway, understand that the primary purpose of the boundaries is really to protect those on the inside, not to try to control the person on the outside. So you're not trying to control your addicted loved one. Now, here's the thing about that. I want you to understand. Really, you don't have any control over them. I mean, we all tend to think, especially as parents, tend to think that we have some sort of control over our addicted loved one at times. And we, out of fear that they're going to die from an overdose or from some type of a drug-related wreck or other type of a drug-related crime or something like that, or they'll end up in prison. Those kinds of fears cause us to act irrationally. And they cause us to sometimes make attempts to control our addicted loved one. But we really should know that we don't have any control over them. And not only do we not have any control over them, but those attempts to control them really result in just creating more friction between us. We as a parent will get frustrated with our child battling addiction when we try to control them and we can't. And they're going to get frustrated because they feel like, hey, I'm an adult. Now, I get it. They're not behaving like an adult if they're addicted to drugs or alcohol, but because there's some changes that have happened in their brain, okay? And so maybe they're 25 years old, but they're behaving like they're more like 15 years old. And as a result, we as parents, we get into that nurturing, rescue, and enabling mode. And it frustrates them because they feel like they're 25 and they don't realize a lot of times that they're behaving like a 15-year-old. They want to be treated like a 25-year-old. So they get frustrated when we attempt to control them. And we get frustrated as the parent because we're trying to force them. We're trying to control them to behave a certain way, and they're not doing that. So it just creates more friction. So we need to let go, learn how to, over time, sometimes it takes a little time, a little practice, a little work, some accountability, but we need to learn how to let go of attempts to control our addicted loved one, our child battling addiction, if you're a parent with a child in that situation. So let's talk about boundaries just a minute. Why do boundaries work? Why do boundaries work to, even though we're not attempting to control our addicted loved one, we're going to, if we set boundaries, we're going to put them in a situation where we may be able to offer them an opportunity to get the right kind of help, to get treatment, while we as the parent are working on our own recovery. Okay, we're getting our own help, we're growing, we're changing, while we're offering them this opportunity. So in the case of, like, if you were going to have an intervention, and an intervention is not always necessary, you might be able to do this just by setting the boundaries. But boundaries will create desperation. Now, you may say, well, a lot of people will say, I can't have an intervention for my child because they don't want to go to treatment. Well, you wouldn't need an intervention if they wanted to go to treatment, right? They never want to go to treatment. It's rare. Sometimes they do, the situation is right, but rarely do they want to go to treatment. So what you can do is, by setting the boundaries, you can help create the desperation. They are running out of options. So you've created a desperation in them, and that desperation drives a willingness to get help, a willingness to go to treatment. They may not want to go, but they are willing to go because they don't have a lot of other options. So you can, the boundaries give you leverage. So those are the three reasons why boundaries work. Number one, they create desperation. Number two, they create a willingness to get help. And number three, they give you leverage. And there's some examples I could use with that. First of all, like I said, your mindset should not be that you're trying to force your addicted loved one, in this case your child, to go to treatment. You're setting the boundaries to protect everyone on the inside, but then that also serves to put them in a position where more than likely it's going to create a willingness in them, and then you can offer them the opportunity to go to treatment. The choice is theirs. They get to make the choice, and that's the way it's presented. A lot of people have the wrong idea about interventions. They think an intervention means that some guy's going to come in here with a silver tongue and talk my loved one into going to treatment. But that's not how it works. An intervention is more about working with the family to set boundaries, to communicate the boundaries lovingly and effectively to your addicted loved one in a way that they can understand, in a way that they can comprehend, and they know that the boundaries are serious and that you're serious this time. And then that helps create that willingness to get the right kind of help. Why should you listen to me? Let me just tell you a little bit about my story so you can understand why you should listen to me. Number one, I saw what didn't work because my oldest son died in a drug-impaired wreck in 2014 after battling addiction for about a year and a half. And, I did some things right. We had an intervention for him. We were able to get him into treatment. But then he got himself kicked out of a sober living home, and I allowed him to move back in. That was a big mistake on my part. I made some other mistakes along the way, and those really, I learned a lot from, what they say, you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. And so I want to share with parents, here are the things that I did right in retrospect, in hindsight. Here are the mistakes that I made. You can learn from me and not make the same mistakes. The other thing is that I'm a family recovery coach. I've been working in this space. My son died in 2014. My oldest son died in 2014 in this wreck. 2015, I published a book, self-published, about that experience. I really didn't understand anything about addiction at the time. I was a grieving father. I was angry when I wrote the book, but it seems to have resonated with a lot of people. The title of the book is A Life Half Lived, a true story of love, addiction, tragedy, and hope. And you can download a free digital copy of that from Amazon, or you can get the hard copy. But, the hard copy, I think, is $15 roughly. But so, I started after that, I began to, I got some invites to speak and I began doing prevention speaking, but I was still trying to understand addiction. I did not understand addiction still. And so someone directed me towards an organization called PAL, Parents of Addicted Loved Ones. And it's a peer support group for parents who have a child battling addiction. It is free to attend PAL meetings. It's a Christian nonprofit. And I eventually began to facilitate a PAL group on a volunteer basis. I did that for 8 years, one night a week for 8 years. And I learned a lot from doing that. Then I realized that some parents needed more than what they could get from a peer support group. And so I began to do family recovery coaching. And I don't even remember what year I started doing that, somewhere around 2018, I think. Then about 2 years ago, I got training on interventions. And so I do interventions and I get to see through the family recovery coaching and through the interventions, I get to see that boundaries do work. I get to see it firsthand at work. I get to see the boundaries at work. I get to see that they do work when I see parents apply what is taught. Communicating the boundaries. A lot of people call it tough love. I don't really like that term. If you want to call it tough love, it's tough on the person giving the love, because if you really love someone and you realize that your actions are harming them or keeping them stuck in their addiction, then you really love them, then you'll learn how to set these boundaries and maintain them. It's going to take some work on yourself. It's going to take some emotional control, and that's something that you can learn over time. You can build that muscle. But in terms of the boundaries, I've seen them work when the parents apply them and when they stick to them. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of that and in just a couple of recent interventions that I've done for people. One of them, we had the intervention. The young man was going to go the day of the intervention, but he was back and forth. He couldn't decide. He was down to the point that he was almost done packing. He was ready to put his clothes in my car and ride with me to treatment. And then he had a phone call from a friend. It was his phone. He was paying for it. He had a phone call from a friend and his friend talked him out of going. And so he didn't go that day, but 2 days later, he was involved in a misdemeanor hit and run and landed in jail. And I stayed in touch with his mother and with a close friend of his. And we were able to communicate through his friend with him while he was in jail. And he stayed there for about 7 days while we worked on a plan. And so I showed up with his mother to bail him out. She bailed him out and he got in the car and rode with me to treatment. So, that's an example of leverage. He had the option of staying in jail. A lot of parents would have run down and bailed him out. I can't say I never, but I would rarely recommend that you bail them out unless you're working with a professional and you have a plan in place to get them into treatment coming out of jail. So, and you feel pretty confident that will work. But a lot of times legal issues can be used as leverage, but you want to maintain your boundaries there. And it's like, no, you don't just go bail them out of jail. I mean, I have another example of a lady who called me many years ago and said, hey, my son is in jail and he keeps calling me, begging me to bail him out. And he promised me that he would go to treatment if I would just come and bail him out of jail. And I said, don't do it. Just please, turn off your phone, whatever you have to do, block his calls for now, but do not go bail him out. Well, she called me a few days later and said, well, I have an update for you. And I said, well, what happened? And she said, I bailed him out and we got to the first traffic light where I had to stop, for a red light. And he jumped out. He's using fentanyl. He's somewhere on the street, a couple of 100 miles from home. And I don't know where he is. And I don't know what he's doing. And I said, well, he'll turn up. He'll probably get arrested and we can go down this road again. Never heard back from that lady. So I'm not sure what happened in that case. But Another example is another intervention I did not too long ago where the young man, the morning of the intervention, he was already awake. We knew he was awake. But he locked himself in his room, would not come out, and numerous people tried to get him to come out of his room, knocked on the door. Well, when we finally opened the door, he was going out of his window, climbing out of his bedroom window. And I went around and tried to engage him, but he would not talk to me and he left. Well, a lot of things happened. I ended up staying with the family overnight, stayed with them in their house, but we crafted a text and sent the text to him and told him he would not be able to get back in the house. And they changed the locks. The parents changed the locks. And, of course, he tried to get back in and could not, and spent the night on the street. But the next day, he never answered our text, never replied to it, but he showed up again. And we had told him, hey, if you want to, if you come back to the house, we'll have a conversation around back. And we did. We had a conversation with him around back, and he tried everything he could to try, every excuse he could think of to get back in that house. But, his parents with me there to back them up kept saying, no, you're not going back in the house. And eventually he got in the car with me and his dad drove us to the airport, and he got on the airplane with us and, with me, and we flew to treatment. We flew to another state, and the treatment facility had some people that picked us up at the airport, and I got him checked into treatment. So, the boundaries worked. The parents maintained their boundaries. If you've got a 25, 26-year-old living in your home and they're not moving ahead, they don't have a job, or maybe they do have a job, but they're high functioning, but they're just barely getting by, and they're just continuing to use, and you see this downward spiral. You have to do something to break that cycle, to get in there, to get them to you need something to sort of an upset to break the cycle. That's not the right term. That's not the term I was looking for, but I can't think of what I wanted to say exactly. But you get the idea. You need a pattern interrupt. That's what I was trying to think of. You need a pattern interrupt in that situation. So an intervention a lot of times can be a great pattern interrupt. And if you work with a good interventionist, they're going to help you communicate lovingly and effectively the boundaries, and they will understand that, hey, my options are narrowing down. And so, and also a good interventionist will work with the family prior to the day of the intervention. There's a lot of prep work that goes into it ahead of time to make sure that it goes well. So again, I'm a family recovery coach and interventionist. And when it comes to being a family recovery coach, that's more about working with the parents, sometimes before an intervention, but quite often after an intervention or after their child is in treatment. The parents need to learn how to set and maintain those boundaries. And a lot of times they cannot do it because they lack emotional control. And that's what I specialize in, is helping the parents learn how to manage their emotions so that they can set and maintain those healthy boundaries. So if you lack emotional control, when your child manipulates you, your child battling addiction, when they try to manipulate you to get what they want, and out of fear, a lot of times people, it's either fear, shame, or guilt. Those are the three big ones, I think. I would say there's maybe some other emotions involved there, but those are the big three that I think of right off the bat. Those emotions will prevent parents from maintaining their boundaries. They'll cave in to the manipulation tactics of their child. They'll rationalize in their mind why they're doing it. Well, they had a really good story. It sounds real. It sounds right. Well, yeah, but how many times do they have to make up these stories that have been proven to you time and time again to be lies? Before you get it, that it's just another lie. It's just another manipulation tactic. If setting boundaries is scary to you, over time you can learn how to build up your boundary muscle. You can start with some small boundaries and then expand out from there. Some examples might be no calls or text. Let's say your child is not living in the home. You can say no calls or text after 9 p.m. You can set a boundary. There's something that's easy for you in the beginning. And you have to hold that. If whatever rule you set, you have to stick to it. So if they call or text after 9, you have to ignore it, right? Until they get the idea. Okay. Um, you know, and that might help you with some of that late night drama and manipulation that's going to keep you awake. You can tell them, hey, you cannot be intoxicated in my home, or you cannot use drugs or alcohol in my home, or you cannot bring your drugs into my home. But you have to be willing to be able to back that up. Depending on the situation, sometimes you can say, hey, I'm not going to pay for your phone, or I'm not going to continue paying for your insurance for your car. In a lot of cases, if you own a car and you're allowing them to drive the car and you know that they have a drug or alcohol problem, then they should not be driving the car, especially not driving your car. To let them go get their own car. So, the thing about it is you can start over time, begin tightening those boundaries a little bit. And a boundary, and this is another one from Matt, a boundary is not a boundary if it doesn't have a consequence. Now, sometimes the consequences are natural, but a lot of these cases, the examples I'm giving you here, you have to have a consequence in mind, and you have to be willing to deliver that consequence. And it has to be reasonable. You can't just, you want to be reasonable so that you're not backing down off of what you said you would do. That sends mixed messages. So, enabling, what is enabling? Enabling is anytime you're doing something for another adult, and in this case, it could be your adult child, that they could be and should be doing for themselves. Sometimes this can apply to teenagers too. Teenagers are not helpless. There are things that they should be transitioning into adulthood. So, think about what kind of things you're doing for them that they could be and should be doing for themselves, and begin to back off of doing those things. Allow them to fail a little bit. Allow them to have some natural consequences. Another interventionist friend of mine, his name is Sam Davis. He has a really neat saying. I think I've kind of taken it and made it my own and added a little something to it. And maybe there's a little slightly different version, but that I have. But I really like this, and this is where I got most of this from, at least. Is from Sam. Sam says you need to allow your child, and sometimes you need to allow your child to have an experience that they need in order to grow into the person they were created to be. So, sometimes you have to allow them to have that experience. So if in some cases that means they're out there on the street. They're out there on the street. They're homeless. Well, sometimes you have to allow that for a period of time at least, so that they can see, this is not working out so good. Maybe I'm not as smart as I thought it was, or maybe my way of this is a better way to say it. Maybe my way of solving this problem is not working. Maybe I should listen to somebody else. Maybe treatment would work. Sometimes you have to allow them to have that experience a little bit. And this is how Sam says it. Sam says, don't rob them. Don't rob your child of an experience they need to have in order to grow into the person that they need to be, or that they were created to be. So when you enable, when you protect, when you rescue, you rob them of that experience that they need that's going to help develop character, and that's going to help teach them that, hey, you can't do this alone. You need help. Remember this, there's only one person in this equation that you have any control over, and that's yourself. And again, you don't want to try to control your child. You want to work on yourself, and you want to take this pain that you're feeling, and I'll do another video about this, but you want to learn how to take this pain that you're feeling from having a child battling addiction, turn it inward, and do some self-examination here. Not to beat yourself up and say, oh, I should have done this better. I could have done that better. That's all in the past. You can't change that. But what you can do is look at where you are now and ask yourself, what can I do better? What can I do better as a parent? How can I set and maintain healthy boundaries going forward? How can I communicate better with my child battling addiction? How can I become more resilient? How can I learn to control my emotions so that I don't cave on my boundaries? And this is an opportunity to take this pain and turn it inward, reflect inward, and have some spiritual growth from this that will just propel you to the next level, not only with your child battling addiction, but so that you can tackle just about anything that comes your way. And I can tell you that I have had a lot of that growth. I'm still a work in progress. Long ways to go. I won't be done until I leave this earth, with that. But certainly I've come a long ways. But my growth, most of it came after my son died. You don't have to wait for that to happen. You experience that growth now, and by doing that, you're also putting your child in their best position to be able to recover from this addiction. When you work on yourself, when you control the one person you can, you're giving them their best chance to recover from their addiction. I think that's going to be it for this video. Just do me a favor, if you like this video, if you like the content, hit the like button for me. If you want to see more content like this or similar to this that helps parents and other family members with a child or a loved one battling addiction to be able to recover from that as a family. If you need some help, if you need some support, hit that subscribe button, and I'll have some more content coming your way soon with a lot more tips to help you get through this challenge, this really tough journey. It is a difficult journey. It can be a roller coaster ride if you allow it to be, but I want you to get off of the emotional roller coaster. I want you to have some peace of mind. I want you to get to a place where you can have some joy in life again. My name is Darryl Rodgers. I am the Family Recovery Coach. I've enjoyed spending a little bit of time with you today, and I'll see you next time.